Hey everybody, welcome back to Keeping It Real with Marilyn and Steve. And today I am doing a video about making yogurt that I have been trying to get to for over 6 months. And I am finally gonna get this done. So yes, I have made yogurt multiple times over the last 6 months. Yes, I have started the video a few different times. No, I have never gotten all the way through to the end. Life sometimes just gets in the way, but it's a new year. We're in 2021. So my goal this year is to get this specific video finished and be able to get other videos out to you on a regular basis. So today is all about making our own yogurt and being able to do that with just 2 ingredients. I'm using my Instapot. You can do it on the stove, but you don't have to use the Instapot if you don't have one. If you prefer the Instapot, I like the Instapot because I can walk away and I don't have to stand next to the stove and I can get other things done at the same time, which is sometimes my downfall because I forget to record what I'm doing. So today we've got our gallon of whole milk. We've got a whole milk Greek style yogurt that has 4 live cultures, which is why I'm using this one. And I have my Instapot. And the Instapot model that I have does have a yogurt button, so that makes it super simple. We have made this using a pot on the stove. Maybe I'll do that in another video. It depends. If you guys would like to see that, let me know. Make sure you comment on this video and let me know that you'd like to see that. So other than that, we'll get started in just a minute. All right, so easiest part of this whole process in making yogurt is getting it started. So we take our gallon of milk, and as I said earlier, I'm just using a whole milk, nothing fancy, and you pour it into the pot. And again, this could be your Instapot, it could be a pot on the stove, whatever you choose to use. Like I said, I use the Instapot because it lets me get other things done at the same time. And I'm always busy. So we've got our gallon of milk poured in. And now you have your choice on how, if you're using an Instapot, we are not pressure cooking it. So it's going to be important that if you use your regular Instapot cover, we put that on. And you turn it to close it, it is going to set it to pressure cook. So you're going to want to make sure that you have it set to vent, because you're not pressure cooking this, we're just bringing it to a boil. Okay, so your other option, if you choose not to use your Instapot lid, is if you have a regular pan lid that fits, you can just put it right on top while it boils. Isn't going to hurt anything to not use the Instapot lid. To be honest, I usually use this as my lid, so that's what I'm going to do today. And then all you have to do is press your yogurt button until it says boil. There we go. And we're going to let that go. This is going to do it all for you. The difference between this and doing it on, and there we go, as it starts. The difference between using the Instapot and on the stove is on the stove, you're going to want to keep an eye on it. You're going to put a thermometer into it and you're going to be stirring it. And you have to be careful when you stir it not to touch the bottom of the pan, because there are going to be milk solids that settle to the bottom and you don't want to keep stirring those in. So using the Instapot for me is the easiest thing, especially when I've got a lot of other things like today. I'm working on photo editing and whatnot. So in between, I can have this going. So we're going to let this go. It's going to boil. When it's done, we'll be back and I'll tell you what we need to check to make sure that we're ready to go on to the next step. So the timer just went off, and now I'm going to put the thermometer in to check and see if it's at the right temp. It's kind of hot. Take the cover off. Put this in. And let's see, it's going up. See if you can see that. And we want to get it to it should be at about 180. I'm going up 179. Almost there. Okay, so what I'm going to do, 179. see, that's close enough. What we want to do is get it to 180. So I'm going to call the 179 good. It took me a second to get the video going. So I was at 180, dropped just a little bit. So now that we've got that set, take my thermometer back out here. And now what we want to do is we want to let this cool back down till it gets to 110 degrees. So what I am going to do is get my gloves on because this is very hot. And I'm going to take it out and I'm going to set it onto a cooling rack like I would use for cookies or pies or breads. And then very, very carefully, because this is very, very hot, I'm just going to let it rest here and cool. And I'm going to put my thermometer back in now that I've got it out of there. And we're going to watch this. And we're going to keep an eye on our thermometer, which is now going back up now that I put it back in. And we're going to wait until it gets down to 110 degrees. And once it gets down to 110 degrees is when we can add our starter of our 1/4 cup of yogurt into this. In the meantime, it's just waiting to let it cool down a bit. Because if we put the yogurt starter in now, what we're going to do is we're going to kill the yogurt starter. So we don't want to kill the cultures. The whole point in boiling the milk was so that we kill any other bacteria that may be in there, and that allows just the active cultures that we're adding into it with our starter of a 1/4 cup of the yogurt that I showed at the beginning to actually thrive and grow, and that's what's going to make our yogurt. So now we're going to have to just wait. I won't make you wait with me, and I'll go get some more work done, and we'll be back shortly to check on it and see where our temperature is at. So our yogurt has cooled down now to 110 degrees. I can touch the side of the pan. It's not super hot. So the next step is to take off a little bit of like a milk skin, builds up on top of the milk as it's cooling. So what we want to do is just take that skin off the top of the container, and I'm just using like a little fork because I'm not looking to get the liquids, just the skin. And it's just this little bit of milk skin that forms on the top of the yogurt. So we want to take that off. And then the next step is to incorporate the 1/4 cup of yogurt that we're using as our starter. And like I said before, I'm using a whole milk Greek yogurt. It's got 4 live active cultures in it. And it's the active cultures that are really what you want. And again, like I said before, that's why we did the boil on this milk and brought it up to the temperature it needed to be, so that we killed any other bacteria that was in here, which allows the active cultures that we want to thrive to do well. So because some of the milk solids settle to the bottom of this pan, and I don't want to stir those back up into the yogurt, what I'm going to do is just scoop a little bit of the yogurt out of the bowl in with our 1/4 cup of our yogurt seed. And that should be pretty good. And then I'm just going to whisk that together. So I'm going to set that down so I don't spill it. And what we're trying to do is just break that yogurt up and really get it to blend in well with the milk that we just boiled. So I'm trying to not have any chunks so that it'll blend nice. So now we've got that blended in. So all I'm going to do is just stir without touching the bottom of the pan. I'm just going to stir that back up. We want to make sure it's well incorporated. And that's the difficult part. So this is a pretty easy process. Like I said, you can do it in a pot on top of the stove. I prefer to use my Instapot because normally on the days that I'm making it, I've got 4 or 5 other things going on at the same time. And just keeping an eye on it constantly on the stove is something that rarely is going to work out well for me. So, all right. So now that we've got that set, what we're going to do is put this back into the Instapot. And as I said before, this Instapot has a yogurt button. So we're just gonna push that button. And it's got 10 hours listed on the front. And that's kind of the time that I like to use. So we're gonna put our cover on, but I don't want it to pressure. So this time I'm gonna go ahead and leave this cover on. I pushed the release valve so that it isn't going to pressure cook. So it is vented. So we're gonna let this run. It will let me know when it's done. It just beeps at me, easy and all good. So for now, we're just gonna walk away, let this do its thing, and then we'll be back when it's done. So it's been 10 hours and the yogurt has finished its process. And now what we're gonna do to test and make sure that it's done is we're gonna take a spoon and we're gonna put it into the yogurt and make sure that it stands up on its own. So there we go. So the yogurt is ready. And at this point, if you just want a regular plain yogurt, your yogurt is ready to go. You can put it into the fridge in whatever kind of containers you want. You can also freeze some of this if you like the way that it came out and you like the taste. You can freeze your 1/4 cup of what you would use for a starter for next time out of this batch of yogurt instead of having to go out and buy fresh yogurt to start over with. But I like my yogurt more of a Greek style than a plain style yogurt. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this container of yogurt and we're gonna pour it into a strainer. We're gonna drain off some of the whey from the yogurt, and that's gonna let it thicken and make it more Greek style. Your flavor is gonna get a little more like a Greek style yogurt, a little more sharp. But that's how I like mine. And in order to do that, we've got our strainer with some cheesecloth in it. I've got mine doubled up. We also have a nice deep bowl so that when we strain this, it doesn't sit in the way because that kind of defeats the purpose. So you want to make sure your strainer is sitting high enough above the bottom of the bowl, or check it periodically and drain off that extra whey before it just sits in it. So let's get this poured in. See what we can do here. So this is where the Instapot has come in handy because I get busy. It just kind of takes care of it for me and I don't have to worry about it. Now, one thing to remember when you're emptying this out is you don't want to scrape the bottom of this container because you're going to have your milk solids in the bottom of the container. So you just want to kind of pour it out. You can scrape the sides a little bit. But you'll kind of get to see, I have to stand on tippy toe because I'm short. You're gonna get to see the thickness of this. And it's gonna pour. See, it's coming out kind of nice and thick. So it just kind of pours out on its own and it really does fill this up right to the top. We've got a little bit, I'm gonna set that, I'm gonna tilt this a little. I don't want it to come out over the edge. That was close. All right, so it filled that right up. And you can see there's still a little bit left in the bottom. So what I'm gonna do is just kind of shake it a little bit to loosen up what's there. Very gently, just get any big pieces off the bottom. And actually what I'm doing is I'm just using the back of the spoon instead of the front of the spoon because I don't want to scrape it. I just want to take off whatever yogurt is left. So let's get the last of this out. Into our container. Okay, set that aside. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I am going to just make sure that my cheesecloth is pulled up here. I'm going to grab a cover for this. I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm just going to put a cover on top of this while it's in the fridge. And it should sit in pretty good. I'm using the same cover that I used on the top of the pot while it was going earlier. So now I'm just going to take and I'm going to put this in the fridge. I'm going to check it in about 4 hours or so, see if it's as thick as I want it. If it is, then I'm going to go ahead and put it in some jars and I'll be back to show you that. If it needs to go a little bit longer, I'm just gonna let it continue until it gets to the texture and the flavor that I like. So time to put this in the fridge, and I'll be back to see you in a little bit. So hey everybody, as usual here in the Real household, things got a little bit busy and crazy yesterday. I did keep an eye on the yogurt as far as making sure I drain the whey. So here we have about almost 6 cups, a little over 5 cups. And this is all the whey that I've drained so far, just out of that yogurt. So I did go through, keep draining it so that it wasn't sitting in the whey, but things got super busy. I ended up letting it sit in the fridge overnight, which for me is fine. That's normally what I do because I like a thicker Greek yogurt anyway, but it's always good, depending on how thick you like your yogurt, to keep an eye on it and pull it out of the fridge and get it jarred when it's at the texture that you like. So last check for whey in the bottom of my container here. So let's see what we've got. And there is still some more whey in here. So I'm going to drain the last of it off. There we go. And that brings us right up to 6 cups. So for the whey, and I'm going to read this off a list because there's no way I can memorize all these different things. There's a lot of different uses for whey. And the reason you might want to keep the whey as opposed to just dumping it down the drain, which some people do, is it's packed with a lot of proteins, minerals, vitamins, and enzymes. So it is actually pretty healthy. It kind of has the same colors like a lemonade, but it is definitely also, keep in mind, this is definitely not the same thing as the powdered whey you would buy at a health food store. 2 totally different animals. So if you're looking to replace your powdered whey that you get at the health food store, this is not it. So you can use whey when you're baking. You can substitute it for the milk or the water when you're doing baking. You can create liquid ferments with this. You can soak whole grains if you want to sprout your own whole grains and maybe then make flour from those whole grains. This is great for getting things sprouted. You can use it in place of water in soups and in stews. You can even add a little bit to your dog's food in place of water. And there's my dog hacking up over on the couch over there, so excuse me. People feed it to their farm animals. If you mix it with enough water, and this is something I'd say do a little research before you do it, you can use it to water your plants as well. So for us, if we're not going to use it for anything in particular, like adding it into soups or stews or anything like that, very often we'll use this as part of our compost because it does put all those awesome enzymes and proteins and everything else into our compost. So for us, that's a normal use for it. But other than that, it's now time to get the yogurt out of the cheesecloth and into our jars. So I've got my jars ready to put the yogurt in, and I'm using the same funnel that I use when I do canning. Yes, these are wide mouth jars, and I could just put the yogurt right in, but still working on my morning coffee. So it's always better to be safe than sorry. So the yogurt we have here is just plain yogurt. Now you can add things like honey or vanilla to it to make a base for it. But our preference is to leave it as it is. And also the reason that we use the pint jars instead of using bigger containers to put it in is it allows us to make our own custom flavors of yogurt. So, and you can kind of see the difference on how thick this is, much thicker than it was before we let it sit overnight. So we have our favorite flavors, and you can use anything, but strawberries, blueberries, peaches, pineapple, mango. You can just add a little bit of vanilla if you just want that vanilla flavor. You can add, like Steve's very, very favorite is to do bacon, maple syrup, and vanilla. And he said it tastes kind of like French toast with bacon. So that's really his favorite. Now, keeping in mind, we're vegetarians, so Steve uses a meat substitute, but There's all kinds of options on what you can do with the yogurt once you get it going. So let me get this into the jars. We'll see how many we come up with, and I'll be back in just a minute. So I've got the yogurt all jarred up, and I ended up with 2.5 quarts of yogurt, 1.5 quarts of whey, and I have my 1/4 cup of yogurt that I had scooped out yesterday that I'm going to put in the freezer and use as my starter for next time. So with the yogurt, if you end up leaving it in the fridge longer than you had planned on, and it's thicker consistency than what you personally like, you can, as long as you've saved your whey, you can always add a little bit of that whey back in to get it back to the consistency that you want. The big thing for everybody with the whey is when you put it in, you want to make sure that you stir it really, really well, because you want to incorporate that back into the yogurt. Some people use the whey in their smoothies because of the protein and the enzymes. It's good for gut health, just like yogurt is good for gut health. Because we did this with a yogurt that had live cultures, your probiotics are great. So it's something that definitely, it's a lot more cost effective than buying yogurt at the store. And I do have the option of mixing it in with whatever I want. So now, if you don't know, this is kind of the beginning steps to making something else that I absolutely love. So if I took this yogurt and I left it in the fridge longer, and I put something on top to kind of compress the yogurt to really, really push out more of that whey, and I let it cure in the fridge, then I can make cream cheese. So if any of you out there would like to see that process and see how that comes out, please comment on this video and let me know that you'd like to see that, and I can work on getting that into another video. In the meantime, everybody, enjoy, have a great time, and remember to like our videos, share them with somebody else you think might like them, and subscribe to our channel. That's really what helps keep us going and lets us know what you like when you leave a comment for us. So again, everybody, have an awesome day, and we'll be back again with another video soon.